you're eating as max as you can go with, and it might not be that it's a huge amount, but it's just as far as you're willing to go with your food intake, and you physically can't consume anymore, and you've gone down the liquids route and you can't consume anymore, then you've only one other choice: reduce expenditure.
Yeah, reduce the amount.
And I don't think people sometimes look at the fact that you can approach this from a two-point of view. You can approach this from increasing calories, or you can approach this from reducing calorie expenditure, which means even if you're not particularly a hard gainer, looking at higher intensity techniques, shorter duration training, maybe less frequently trained, it might mean that you have to increase your rest days. But if that's the case, then you have to make sure that when you do train, you increase that intensity up a lot as well.
So just so you know, I have gone live.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Turns out we get a lot more people watching on Facebook than we do on Instagram. We've got Matt Wild watching, Nathan Devlin's watching, Chris Woods, quite a few people. So we're going to cover...
Hello, peoples!
We have been to Sunderland.
Some weird up north town, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't understand what they were talking. They're very insistent that they're not Geordies. They all seemed lovely. We went to train at a gym called...
Marine House
80. Very good gym, lots of cool equipment.
Loads of Panata 80 stuff. Fucking hell.
Really good.
Proper old school.
Cool owner.
Really nice guy, actually, yeah.
So we've trained. On our way back now, we're on a road. We've got about an hour and a half to get back. We've done a live on Instagram, so if you watch that one, we might end up covering the same things twice. But we've been looking at optimising training without overcomplicating it, recovery approaches, and open Q&A. So if anyone's got any questions, get them in early so we can get around to covering them. Dave has a habit of covering topics in a lot of detail.
Waffling.
Yeah, a little bit. And before we get any questions, we will just start on... We already did optimising training on Instagram, so we'll start on... Are we going to another gym? We're not. No, we're heading back to Dave's. I'm going to get on my bike and I'm going to ride home in the pissing rain by the looks of things. So we're going to look at recovery approaches. Recovery in terms of nutrition, recovery in terms of active rest, recovery periods, signs of overtraining, that kind of thing. So do you want to lead on any of those, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is it's probably splitting hairs and it doesn't really matter how you term things, but a lot of people say you can't overtrain, and to a degree they're correct in a sense, in that you're probably very, very, very unlikely to be able to have so much mechanical output within your training that you've gone beyond the point of your muscles' ability to recover. But at the same time, you can have inadequate rest or inadequate nutrition that prevents them recovering correctly. So effectively it's the same fucking thing. So let's not worry about whether it's under recovery or overtraining. The effect is the same. You don't grow because you're not in an optimum state, because you're not recovered, so you're not growing. But I mean, we all quite generally tend to look at increasing food, and as long as digestive health is good and you're absorbing the food that you're increasing to, then there's no real issue there. But we all come to a point where it starts to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You can look at adding liquids in at that point to try and make it a little bit easier, but ultimately you'll still come to a point where it's uncomfortable. You may still have a desire for growth, but you find you've limited on your calorie intake. But the angle that people don't often look at is, well, I can reduce my calorie expenditure. So if I can't increase the calories I'm taking in, for whatever reason, maybe I can decrease the calories I'm putting out. And that's where being very efficient with your training comes in, being able to get on it very, very quickly when it comes to actually getting the muscle working and engaging correctly with it. And dropping a lot of the fluff, and dropping a lot of excess calorie burn, and very much a high intensity approach, but bearing in mind that then you're going to be looking at extremely intense workouts that may be very short in duration, but they're going to have to be incredibly intense to replace the volume that you're reducing them by.
So Nathan has asked a question. It's a question that we did cover on Instagram before. While being assisted, is recovery as important, or is the same amount needed? Now, Dave, I will paraphrase this and Dave will correct me if it's wrong. Dave postulated that if you're natural, you may take longer to recover
You will, but your level of intensity is going to be less, because at the end of the day, gear will enable you to train harder and more intensely, so therefore you do a pharmacological level of damage. You're not going to get that when you're natural. You're only going to be able to achieve a natural level of damage. So the two sort of throw hand in hand, and I find with a lot that the volume, the reps, the sets and everything don't actually need to change that much, because you're naturally, if you are pushing as hard as you can, you're naturally going to be more intense in your training on gear, so you're going to do more damage, so you're going to push things beyond, but obviously your recovery is speeded up because of the drugs as well, so the two sort of go hand in hand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What a shit pain job.
That's horrendous.
Yes.
Where do you stand on post-workout, very large intakes of simple or complex carbohydrates? I know it's very trendy. I think it's one of those things, I call them JP-isms, and that's maybe not fair, but quite often I see a lot of people who are bikini girls or physique guys who are eating no carbs, high fats on their rest days and very, very high carbs on their training days. They quite often don't know why that is, and I believe it's because people like JP do it. The reason people like JP do it is because they're using insulin on their training days. It's not necessarily going to be beneficial for a lot of people.
Well, there's a thing that I really don't understand. We have two energy sources, fats or carbs.
Yeah. Yep.
Protein can be used as an energy source, and our body will flip in and out as when it's required to burn proteins as an energy source.
Yeah, although it's only going to do that if it's completely lacking in anything else.
Yeah, but it's got that safety net, so to speak.
Yeah.
If you've got higher proteins in there, you've got a secondary energy source if required. But your body's not going to flip from burning carbs to burning fats and back again.
No.
So why have high fats on a rest day?
The only reason to do it would be if you were using large amounts of exogenous insulin on your training days and
you're just trying to keep your insulin sensitivity to some degree.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen with that fat? Because you're not going to burn it as an energy source.
You're going to store it effectively, probably.
So I don't understand that. And
logically,
but then that goes down to the don't use fucking insulin, you knobhead, because you don't need it.
I like insulin. Logically,
yeah, well, you're just a fan.
Logically, you would get the same results by just going lower carb on your rest days. But then people would argue that would put you in a caloric deficit over the course of the week, and they're doing it in the off-season. The point is, if you're a smaller athlete and you're not using insulin, copying the techniques used by very large athletes, quite often with regards to training and everything else, is not relevant. I believe the term, you get people juicing like a 20-stone man but eating like a 12-stone girl.
What, bikini girls carb loading? What the fuck?
Well, yeah, not necessarily. You've got to work to the physique and that you have, not necessarily the physique you want. Where do you stand on very large intakes of carbohydrates post-workout? I personally have never got a massive benefit from it. I've always felt I've worked as well just having a consistent carb intake throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, I like to trickle feed, and I don't even reduce carbs on non-training days, because to me, our bodies aren't that sensitive, so it's more about total caloric intake over a longer period as opposed to specific day to day.
Tom Fisher's watching. That's nice.
Hi, Tom. So I've never really found. I find actually keeping carbs slightly higher, or at least equivalent to training day levels on rest day, is a good way of getting those carbs up totally over a period of 7 days. It comes down to digestive health. Okay.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having 300 grams of Cocoa Pops post-workout. I'm just saying that I've personally never seen a huge benefit.
I think it comes down to digestive health. There's two things here. You know, the big bottleneck in growth is our digestive systems. It's a very big limiting factor as to how much of the food that we consume we can actually digest, absorb, and then transport to the muscle. And yeah, okay, insulin will increase that nutritional shuttling, but it does it at a cost. And I just personally, I don't think it's worth it. All right, maybe low dose, a couple of 2-3 IU with certain meals potentially.
That's how I run it, in fairness.
But any more than that, I think you're just being a dick. And it'll bite you on the arse long term, particularly when it comes to comp prep. You'll find it a lot harder. But with regards to large meals, in order for our bodies to be able to absorb that large calorific intake post-workout, the digestive system has to slow down, because that food has to pass through our digestive tract slower to give the body time to absorb the nutrients, because it can't absorb it all at once. So it just seems a bit daft making things more difficult for your body. Work with it, you know. start with a regular size meal and increase it slightly and increase it slightly. And when you get to a point where you know what, this is a bit, pull back a little bit.
So just to stop you for a second there, Dave, we did lose signal for a little while. I understand that the recording will catch up with itself. So apologies if there were any interruptions there, but it did say that it will upload it when our signal's back, which it is. Dewi Wright has asked a question. What would be termed a decent recovery period for strength athletes? Like, is it worth training every other day, to have a day between to recover? My opinion on this would be that it totally depends on the individual, their workload, and their personal ability to
also
recover.
Depends very much on the style of training. If you're heavy, low numbers, it's not your muscles that are going to take more time, but your central nervous system is going to do. If you've got a high stress job, that's going to impact on so that with strength work, your biggest area of concern is your central nervous system and protecting that, and that will come down to daily stressors, sleep patterns as well. For bodybuilders, you can get away with a very high volume, high frequency of training because you're not overly stressing your central nervous system if you're not going sub 6-5 rep deals. When you start going down to 4s and 3s and those sort of numbers, then your nervous system is going to get very heavily taxed, and as a result of that, you're going to start to get adrenal fatigue and problems associated with that. So it all depends on the style of training you're doing. There isn't a one fit fix, to be honestly. As a strength athlete, you could probably get away with 3 days at very high level intensity and then 2 fluffy days of raw volume and blood movement and that sort of thing.
I know most of the strongmen that I used to train with still adopt kind of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday training pattern with an event day on a Sunday. I know that's how
technique day or something like that, which is if it's, and the thing is with technique work, for powerlifters, if you're doing it, if it's technique work, you shouldn't be overly taxing the muscle. So it's more about ingraining that repetition and that style into the brain. I mean, they say 10,000 reps before your body learns it. Something like that, yeah. It's about 10,000 repetitions between the neural pathways in your brain. I accept that as a ingrained action, and it's automatic.
Someone's asked if naps count towards recovery. I don't know the technical answer, but I know when I was a lot bigger.
Now, hang on, are we on about sleeping, or are we on about nap 50s?
We are on about sleeping.
All right, okay.
Nap 50s do help with recovery.
Yeah, of course it does. You know, I mean, rest and recovery at the end of the day, and some people will find I struggle with sleep. I don't sleep very well at all, and I find that if I can get a couple of 30-minute just quiet moments, don't even have to be asleep, during the day, my recovery's a lot better.
When I was bigger, I would shut the shop for half an hour and have a nap in the day.
I was famous when I had my gym for being found asleep on the sofa when we were open. People just would leave money on the side. Yeah. Piss off.
No, I definitely think that's a useful strategy, particularly if you struggle to get a full night's sleep at night, which I used to do. Interestingly, since I've been less obsessed with food and more comfortable with my own body image, my sleep patterns have improved. I don't know if that's something specific to me.
Any sort of stress, agitation, whatever it may be, is going to affect sleep. Simple as that.
So yeah, that's
one thing I found when I was younger and
long time ago,
many moons ago. I did a lot of self-visualization and self-meditation, and I generally believe it was very, very beneficial, especially to growth and to being successful in my training. The problem with it is actually hard work, and it takes a couple of months of a lot of dedication and a lot of focus to be able to do it properly. But I did find that worked massively well.
Sleep aids.
How much? Whiskey?
The problem with sleep aids, so you've got kind of two camps of sleep aids. You've got things that help with serotonin and dopamine management, like 5-HTP, and I would put those in the positive category because they're helping reinforce your natural positive sleep patterns. Then you've got other things like Phenibut, like Valium, like Zolpiclone, sleeping tablets, which are forcing you into a sleep state, but they don't help recovery. I feel that they can have a negative effect. They might be useful to re-establish a more natural sleeping routine if you've got completely out of whack, but
the other thing is the problem with those dependency as well.
Massively so.
Dependency.
I've had an issue with Valium in the past. It wasn't very pleasant. It was very, very hard to break that pattern. I think the thing with sleep that people don't focus on because it's not cool is their sleeping routine. So really boring shit, like switching all the lights off half an hour before you go to bed, reading a book instead of reading your phone, making sure there's no blue lights, no phone screens, no telly screens, anything like that, having a bath, washing your face.
With candles and floaty things.
Yeah, knocking one out. Anything you need to do to establish a routine for bed will help.
Trust you to go on to masturbation.
Well, you know, whatever works for you. Because it's very easy to just go, well, I'll have this sleeping tablet and I'll sleep, and that might work for a week, a month, even 6 months, but long term, you're not gonna get a benefit out of it. Growth hormone for sleep. I find MK677 massively improves my sleep, but I can't take it for huge periods of time. MK677, if you don't know, does affect insulin sensitivity. One thing I'm very lucky with is my insulin sensitivity is very, very high. Very, very good, naturally. So MK677 doesn't cause me a massive negative effect in that regard, but it's something you've got to be aware of. I've used high-dose growth hormone in the past, and it
Kept me awake.
kept Dave awake because he's weird. It did make me sleep more deeply, but it also made me very tired in the day and very lethargic. I think fundamentally using growth hormone to aid in sleep is a massively expensive way of using growth hormone, and not a particularly efficient one.
The thing is with growth hormone, I mean, I think insulin and growth hormone are two most overrated drugs we use. I know you like insulin, but you like it for its immediate fullness.
Yeah,
It's about
and I suppose I don't really make any bones about that. I like insulin because I can take it for a week, look 20 pounds heavier, and it's great for a photo shoot or a meeting at the shop or whatever. Its actual muscle building properties are somewhat overrated.
Yeah, and I think the two drugs are very, very overrated. But having said that, low dose, intermittent growth hormone dosing every other day sort of thing, or every third day, very, very beneficial to overall health.
Dominic Dunleavy has asked, where is the Manchester show? Manchester.
What Manchester show?
Dominic Dunleavy has asked, where's the Mr. Manchester show?
Oh, Dave's show.
Yeah, it's at Manchester.
I presume so.
No, fucking no idea.
I don't think it's in Burnley.
No, it's definitely somewhere in Manchester. Dave Foster would be the person to ask on that one.
It's an independent as well, isn't it now? It's not IBFA.
Yeah, although I think they still qualify for the IBFA
Right, okay.
finals somewhere, something like that. So yeah, where were we? So yeah, sleep aids. What do you expect? You know, this is me and Davey talking to. Sleep aids, I'm not a huge fan of actual physical sleeping aids. I just think long term it's counterproductive.
I used to like GHB.
Well, I mean, it's great if you wanted to take a lady home.
No. I'm talking way back when in the the 90s, when we weren't all doing that weird shit with it, when it was a bodybuilding drug.
I must admit, I've never actually used real GHB.
Tastes like shit.
I used GABA.
Fucking files.
GABA used to be very easy to get hold of. In fact, we used to sell it over the counter.
But again, GHB is very habit forming very, very quickly. You'll soon be hooked on that shit.
So yeah, 5-HTP, very underrated for sleep. Boring old ZMA. I believe it's only the magnesium that actually helps with sleep, so you could just have that on its own.
Good product though, a very underrated product, I feel.
ZMA? Yeah, no, I generally still recommend it, even though it's not massively exciting.
We're now going past the Heck Sausage Factory.
Oh, I do like Heck sausages. I can't hack chicken breast anymore. I've just had it for too long.
Yeah, I mean, it is going off topic a little bit here, but protein and food rotation is very, very important, because you will just, if not even psychologically, but definitely physically, you will start to reject foods if you eat the same thing over
Jake
and
Willoughby.
over again.
I'm not entirely sure if I know who Jake Willoughby is, but he's asked the best workout for biceps. Honestly, it's going to depend on you. If you have the cash spare, book a session with Dave, and he'll show you a few things that will work very, very well. ZMA doesn't have to be taken with an empty stomach, Nathan. It just has to be taken without dairy.
I didn't know that.
The calcium in dairy binds to it. So
I thought it was the fats, actually.
no, it's calcium. So it doesn't need to be taken on an empty stomach. It just needs to be taken without dairy. Now, there is actually one company, Bodytronics, and they make a calcium-free casein that is designed to be used with ZMA, which is a very good idea, but it's quite expensive, so no one really bothers with it.
I learned.
You did learn. So yeah, best biceps workout.
I think the two very, very simple tips for biceps is the largest range of motion you can get, which means full extension. So if you're not able to contract your tricep at the bottom of the movement, you aren't fully extended. the palm must be facing up throughout any movement. So you don't want to start in a hammer and then twist up. It needs to stay up all the time. Other little tips: pin your elbow slightly forward if you're in a seated or standing position, and do not move your elbow. If you're on a preacher bench, sit down low. Do not let your shoulders come over the top. You know, at the end of the day, the only thing that should be moving when you're training biceps is your forearm. If anything else is moving, you're not training biceps.
So Andrew Doherty has asked, is it true that your body actually rejects food if you eat the same foods day in, day out? And I know you've had issues with oats and a few other bits and bobs.
Yeah, well, I'm not my strongest subject, and Rich will probably correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe it's to do with enzyme production. Now, we produce enzymes, and wholesome foods, as in non-adulterated foods that have got preservatives in and stuff like that, contain the enzymes necessary for that food to be digested. One of the problems we have, and this is one of the problems we have with cereals, like breakfast cereals, is that those enzymes are removed in order to preserve that food, because it's those enzymes that cause that food to rot, go off.
That makes sense.
So, if you eat the same food continuously day in, day out, particularly at high volume, you can literally run out of that enzyme, which then makes your body is just difficult for it to break it down. So I'd suggest personally that you try and rotate all your food sources, so your veg source, your carb sources, and your protein sources. Generally, when I do diets, because I generally do off-season stuff for people, so the calorie intake's a bit more flexible. They can pick between 3 or 4 different meat sources for their protein source, and they can pick between 2 or 3 different carb sources for their carb sources. And the weights are adjusted so that there or thereabouts the same amount of carb or protein content within the food that they're eating. But yeah, I do believe that if you stick to the same food day in, day out, your body can start to reject it digestively, but also psychologically as well. I mean, I remember getting to the point where I couldn't even stand the smell of chicken.
Yeah, I mean, I think the enzyme thing is certainly relevant. There are some good digestive enzymes on the market now that you can get, but I although I own a supplement shop, I'd always consider a supplement to be a tool of last resort with a digestive issue.
Well, the thing you've got to remember is in the name of what it is. It's a supplement. It's on top of. It's not instead of.
For me, it's always been psychological. So brown rice and chicken are 2 foods that I just can't hack anymore. Particularly if I have to cook them myself from raw. I can buy ready cooked chicken and eat it.
Shit.
What?
Should have come off.
Missed the exit.
No, I didn't miss the exit. We've got a fucking tree in front of us.
Bad stuff happened. So yeah, for me it was always purely psychological. Now, the best example I can think of this is mackerel. I used to love mackerel. The last proper prep that I did that I saw through, I had mackerel, I think 2 meals a day, every day for about 10 weeks. And the smell of it makes me heave now. And it was always one of my favourite foods. That's purely psychological, because it was...
I have found that changing textures with foods can help. For argument's sake, if you've been eating steak, switch to mince.
Yeah.
Or adding textures to food. So one thing I found that helped with the chicken was I used to break up Rivitas.
Yeah.
Add that to the chicken. And that change in texture made the food more palatable.
It's interesting, someone just asked about, would you say switch protein sources and try fish and then turkey and then chicken? That's a good way of doing it. You were talking about textures then. I had someone in the shop the other day who was working with an American coach, I believe it was, and they were saying it was killing them because they had on their meal plan fillet steak for one meal and then rump steak for another meal, and it was financially very, very difficult for them to maintain. There's no difference between fillet steak and beef mince of the same fat content. People will argue that there is. If there is, it's very negligible. Very negligible. So if you are on a diet plan like that where it says rump steak or whatever, and financially it's an issue, or just in terms of your palate, there's no reason why you can't substitute. For example, I don't use beef mince anymore. Aldi do these beef burgers that are 5% fat. I use those because they're easier for me to eat.
The other thing is as well, you know, you can, with making food more interesting, you'll make it more palatable.
Yeah, very much so.
Simple things: mince, slow cooker, tomatoes, onions, garlic, peppers. Those additions of onion and tomato and peppers are not really going to impact macros in any way, particularly in a bulk.
Yeah.
But they make that food so much more eatable.
You can certainly be more flexible in a bulk than when you're
Definitely,
cutting.
because you don't have as tight a calorie control. But even in a diet, you know, I remember once seeing a diet somebody sent me, and he was allowed 3 asparagus tips with a meal.
Yeah, it's nonsense.
It's fuck off.
I mean, I prep most people giving them macros. I know Dave prefers to give set food choices, weight, so on. The reason I do that is that most people, as long as they're not dicks, will inherently move towards whole food choices as time goes on anyway, because it's more satiating, it's more filling, they get more bang for their buck.
Most people are dicks.
Yeah.
Present company included.
And we've lost signal again. Should come back. It's back. There we go. On the food talk, swapping solid meals for shakes, opinions. That's from Ben Scott. I know me and Dave have a very differing opinion on this.
I feel eat sparingly.
I feel if it's 1 to a maximum of 2 meals a day and the calories and macros are matched, it's not going to matter. I know Dave is not as much of a fan.
I would always go whole food as a choice, but what I would do if you're struggling, I would rather see a half solid meal, half liquid meal than a purely solid meal.
Yeah, that's a fair shout.
So effectively the same as what you're doing, and the calorie intake through liquids in a day just split over 4 meals, half.
I mean, the thing you're going to primarily miss out on with a shake is normally fibre. Now, you can get some
digestive action, calorific burn from food.
Yeah. I mean, if food's in a shake, your body hasn't got to work to break it down and digest it. That can relieve quite a bit of digestive stress, but it can also cause digestive stress due to the lack of fibre. Some shakes contain fibre. They might have things like sweet potato in. There might be a shake coming soon with sweet potato in. Or you can make shakes yourself. A lot of people will get all fucking up in arms. Oh, don't buy a mass shake off the shelf. Make it yourself. Now, I sell both. I sell whey protein and I also sell mass gainers. Our most popular mass gainer at the moment gives you 70 or 80 grams of carbs from oats and barley. It gives you 50 grams of protein from whey concentrate, and it gives you about 10 grams of fats from MCTs. Yes, you can make that yourself with oats and peanut butter and whey, but after you've made it and blended it and done the washing up, and by the end of the month it probably works out the same cost. There's nothing wrong with a ready-made shelf off the shake if you want, so don't let people make you feel bad because it's easier for you to buy a shake. Dave is right, I'd always prefer a whole food approach where possible, but since having a kid myself, I can honestly say that sometimes that convenience is invaluable.
I think one of the problems is that people will jump to shakes too quickly.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I tend to hold back that option from clients for a while until they've really tried the whole food, and then they've come back and said, you know what, I've tried it and it doesn't work for me. Then we'll look at the shake option, but I don't offer it out to them too early because they'll just take it because it's easy.
Cornelius Parking has joined us.
Hey, Con!
That's it.
You know Con broke his back?
No?
Yeah.
So Ben Scott, even when bulking, for example, 4 solid and 4 high calorie weight gainers or 8 small meals with a shake on each meal. I would personally say that 4 high calorie gainers in a day is too much. I think digestively you would start to struggle. Obviously there is a degree of personal tolerance. Cornelius says you're a dickhead. It's cute when Americans adopt British words, isn't it?
He's Irish, Swiss, God knows what hybrid is Con.
Yeah, I personally feel that amount of mass gainers would be too much. If you do it and it works for you, then it's not my place to say that it's not the right thing to do, but it wouldn't be my first port of call.
The problem is, if you go to that set early on, where do you go from there?
Yeah, put butter on everything.
You know, if you don't max out your solid food intake first and then add the shakes and you go to food and shakes, where do you go from there?
Yeah, it's a good point. So I think quite often people will instantly assume that they need 5, 6, 7,000 calories in a bulk, and there are some people who do, but Will Carver's a very good example. I'm coaching Will Carver, and we've been steadily gaining a pound a week for quite a while now. When I sent him his diet plan, he initially said that's not enough calories, just try it, and he is gaining steadily on what he thought wouldn't be enough calories for him to even maintain on.
I think the other thing as well, and I've seen this a lot with clients, people jump calories too quick.
Get fat and then diet and don't spend any time.
It's not even that as well. You might be on 2,500, you go up to 3,000, you don't see any weight gain. You go up to 3,300, you don't see any weight gain. So you think, fuck it, and go to 5,000.
Yeah.
Where you go to 3,500, you won't see anything. But then 3,650, all of a sudden you start getting weight.
You've got to bear in mind, if you're maintaining weight, you might only need a slight jump above that in order to start to gain. Something we spoke about at the gym today, and something I've spoken about on Instagram before, people are very quick at the moment because everyone's obsessed with being lean all round and lean gains and fuck off. People jump into mini cuts as soon as they might say, right, I'm going to gain 30 pounds. The second they've gained 30 pounds, they're straight into a cut. And they do that because they're uncomfortable with the way they look, they're scared that they won't be able to lose the weight, a multitude of reasons. But if you don't maintain that weight for a period of time, you'll never develop that mature, dense muscle tissue. You can only do that by holding the weight for a period of time.
And if you want rapid weight gain, which is possible, and I mean clean rapid weight gain, not just weight for the sake of it, then you have to be prepared to suffer, because it's going to hurt. And it's going to hurt you getting there quickly, but it's also going to hurt you being that way quickly, because it does take months and months and months for your body to adjust to walking around at 3 stone heavier than you used to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of people, they gain the weight and then it's like, oh God, I feel uncomfortable, I feel like shit, so I'm going to diet. If your body hasn't had that time to adjust and accept that new tissue, it ain't going to hold on to it. So just be prepared to be uncomfortable.
People shit themselves.
Yeah,
I can't see my abs, fuck.
Well, it's not even just that, it's also the feeling of feeling heavy, of feeling uncomfortable. I remember when I first hit 360 pounds, I felt like fucking arse. You know, everything was an effort, but now I've been so much above that, sitting at 360 now is a fucking piece of piss.
I mean, there's certainly a weight at which you feel the best. I know if I start to diet, when I hit around 100, I'm about 115 kilos at the moment. If I hit about 105, I feel very good. And then when I go much below that, if you spend time at 130, I can guarantee you when you came down to 115, you'd feel the same. Oh, quite probably. But then when I start to go much below 105, everything starts to hurt again. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Keep your weight.
It is. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but it is true.
Yeah, no, very much so. Or if you don't want to, don't. But
well, this is the other thing. Look, I mean, let's be right with this. The amount of people you see that are moaning about prep, they're moaning about starving, they're moaning about being skinny, then they're moaning about the complex, then they're moaning about bulk, and you've got to think, why the fuck do you do this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, if you enjoy it, do it. If you don't, there's nothing wrong with not doing it, you know? I don't compete. Why? Because I fucking hate dieting, I'm shit at it. So I don't do it. I don't give a shit what anyone else thinks. I don't give a shit if people think I could look better leaner. Yeah, I would look better leaner, but for me, the journey to be there is, I don't like it, so I'm not going to do it.
It's a very, very valid point. It's something people don't talk about.
And we spend so much time investing in the way we look, we stop investing in who we are. And then we end up in this horrible situation where all we are is this shell. All we are is this image. And if anything alters that image, we struggle to cope with it because that's our entirety, because we've not spent no time investing in what's inside, which is who we truly are, because none of us maintain our image indefinitely.
It's got a little bit deep there, hasn't it?
Well, it has, but I mean, it is important, you know? I mean, if we all spent as much time, myself included, invested in being a better person or being more in touch with who we were as an individual, we don't give a shit about Instagram and all this bollocks. In fact, Instagram will probably go bust.
I speak to people all the time who are putting themselves under so much pressure to look a certain way, to do a certain thing.
And for what? So they get a like on a social media?
Yeah.
Which the vast majority is.
And I think there's this mindset that, oh, if I can, I mean, I've done it myself, if I can just get to 300 pounds, if I can just get to 400 pounds.
Hey, I fucking nearly killed myself getting to 400 pounds, and when I got there, it was like,
If I get there, I'll be happy. And you get there and nothing changes.
I thought the heavens were going to open, the clouds were going to part, a beam of light was going to come down, and the angels were going to sing. All that happened was my kidneys went, fuck off, I ain't working no more.
A couple of questions come in. Weight gain on a calorie deficit, can I put it down to heat, water retention, stress? 3 kilos in 3 days. I would assume that you haven't drunk enough in the hot weather.
I would say it was heat and environment related.
Heat and environment related. The key thing to remember, so weight gain and weight loss should always be tracked over a weekly average. Daily changes are normal. I fluctuate even now by between 3 and 5 kilos in weight between the morning and the night every day. And if my hydration is off, those fluctuations will carry on over a period of 24 hours. That's normal. However, if you say at any point, I'm in a calorie deficit, but over the last 2 weeks I've gained weight, you're not in a calorie deficit. Fundamentally, because you've gained weight. For you to be in a calorie deficit, if you're in a calorie deficit over a period of 2, 3, 4 weeks, you will lose weight. If you haven't, you're not in a deficit. Simple as that. Now, that can have many, many factors to it, and that can get very, very complex, but fundamentally you need to move more or eat less, and make sure that you're tracking your
There are exceptions, but they're a lot less common than people would like to think.
Yeah. Gary Clark, how many calories / meals a day would you recommend for me, being a disabled strongman looking to maintain strength? I'm not worried about seeing my abs. Many thanks for your support and advice. So that's a tricky question, because I don't know anything about you. I don't know what your resting metabolic rate is. I don't know what your net energy expenditure is. I don't know the nature of how many calories you're currently taking in.
I would suggest that you start in what you feel is a slight deficit, and you gradually increase those calories, tracking weight and condition. So you can use calcium caliper photographs, whatever you want, and weight, and you increase those calories by as little as 200 or 300 calories a week until you start to see weight gain.
Yeah.
And then you know you're in positive. And that's a simple way of doing it, a very lot less complex way of doing it, but it's actually quite an accurate way of doing it.
I've talked about this on my Instagram before, and I basically agree. Pick a number out of your arse. I don't care whether you've worked it out on MyFitnessPal, if your PT mate has worked it out for you, or you've just picked a number at random that you think is about right.
12,000.
Pick a number of calories that you think is about maintenance for you. Do that consistently for a week. Don't have a fucking cheat meal on a Saturday, just do that consistently for a week. And if you have gained weight, then you're in a surplus. If you have lost weight, you're in a deficit, and if you've maintained weight, then you're roughly at maintenance. From that point, adjust as you need to.
And that maintenance boundary initially can be quite broad, so you could actually have 300, 200, 300 calories either side of that number where you're not going to see a particular weight change.
Yeah.
You'll find your body is resistant to change, especially if it's at a weight it's been acclimatized to for quite some period of time, and this includes weight loss and weight gain. And sometimes you won't get that finite increase off a small percentage increase. You just need to continually just gently push it and push it and push it till it breaks and starts to move. And quite often when you do that, you can find you can even pull the calories back a little bit and still maintain progression. The more sensitive you are when it comes to insulin sensitivity, the better your body will respond to calorific changes.
So now some people will ask, why is that area of maintenance so broad? And this is something that can sound complicated when people want to make themselves sound cleverer than they are, but it's really quite simple. If your maintenance is actually about 2,000 calories and you eat 2,200 calories, there's a good chance that you will just start moving about more to the tune of 200 calories or 300 calories or whatever you've consumed additionally. Your body's very clever at making use of the fuel you give it.
You might find your core temperature increases very, very slightly, that just burns more calories.
Additionally, your maintenance figure, people talk in absolutes with nutrition, your maintenance figure will vary day to day. Today, we've been to the gym and trained for an hour and a half, and we've spent the majority of the day sat in the car. So my maintenance today will be drastically different to a day that I've spent unpacking boxes and stacking shelves all day.
And at the same time, I can sit in a chair all day in the sun and relax, and I can sit in a chair all day in front of my computer screen working on projects or trying to sort shit out, and I'll burn more calories when I'm sat in front of the computer screen because I'm more stressed.
So a couple of questions come in. One of them I'm going to answer straight away before Dave does, and he'll probably disagree with me. I've based my answer around some stuff I've done on protein overfeeding studies. Common question that always gets argued about, how much protein in grams per pound? So I work in grams per kilo because I'm younger than Dave. So for a natty, 2 grams per kilo of body weight. For an assisted person, 3 grams per kilo of body weight. For a very heavily assisted person who is trying to max out everything that they're doing, 4 grams per kilo of body weight. And in someone like Alan Carson that I'm prepping at the moment, I will go as high as 5 grams per kilo of body weight, purely because they've gone very, very low calories overall and it's satiating. But 2 grams per kilo of body weight for a natty, 3 grams for an assisted, 4 grams for a very heavily assisted.
The only thing I disagree with is I don't think you need the massive increase on the heavily assisted, because there's an increase in protein retention anyway.
Yeah.
So you're more efficient at using the protein you eat. But it's enough. It's a start.
Dave's argument is very solid. there's some studies on protein overfeeding that basically show that there are only positives to further increasing your protein intake, assuming your kidneys work and so on.
Yeah, no, I don't have an issue with protein overfeeding at all, or protein overload, or whatever you want to phrase it. At the end of the day, I always find it's a little bit of a backup energy in case you do outstretch your carb intake.
James Grealish is watching. I like your shit.
But it doesn't do any harm, effectively, as long as it's within the calories that you're allowing yourself.
So James Grealish is watching. That's cool. The other question,
JG.
So Andrew Doherty has asked, do you recommend if someone is using insulin that they cycle it, say 6 weeks on, 4 weeks off? I'll let Dave answer this because I personally don't recommend that anyone use insulin, or I don't like to give out specifics on insulin use because I know that my experience with it is somewhat limited.
I don't think people should be using it full stop. I mean, that's the honest answer.
Yeah.
I think you're never going to get what you think you're going to get from it. You'll get nice and full and you'll feel huge and everything else, and then it'll stop and you'll just disappear. I mean, if you are insisting on using it, then yes, you need downtime. Yes, you need a break because you need to manage your insulin sensitivity. Milos is known for being a heavy insulin user, and his protocol is simple as this: use insulin till you get insulin insensitive, then just use more. And that's effectively what he does. Where that, all right, yeah, I mean, it gets over that problem, but it's a very short-term way of looking at it, where if you manage your insulin sensitivity, you'll need a lot less insulin. I know stuff like adding berberine in when you're using insulin will mean that if you were running, say, 12 IUs, you'd probably drop down to about 4 and have the same impact. So, to me, it's crucial that you manage insulin sensitivity in whatever you're doing, because the more sensitive you are, the better your body will respond, and the better everything will work. But I do, like I said earlier in this, I do think insulin is hugely overrated, and having done huge amounts of the stuff, I found no carryover with muscle mass at all.
So from my perspective, the way I use it with clients...
We use it as a digestive aid almost, don't you?
I use 2 or 3 IU with meals away from training, and then I'll use a GDA like Glycomax around training.
And that, I can see that approach, and I can see where there's some benefit to nutritional shuffling around meal windows, particularly if you struggle with appetite, particularly if you struggle with stuff like that. But in general, for most people, it's just not fucking necessary.
Don't worry, some people are complaining of signal issues. We are dropping in and out of signal, but the video is being recorded, so we'll upload that separately once we're done. Now, Gary Clark has just asked something quite complicated. He just said thank you for our advice. He says he's got CP, which I assume is cerebral palsy, so he says he burns a lot more energy just trying to do day-to-day tasks than a normal person would. That makes sense.
Yeah.
The key is, Gary, just to find your maintenance and then work from that.
This is where we look at trying to conserve energy expenditure as much as we can and trying to minimise unnecessary tasks so that you maximise the calories that you are taking in for growth.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. The way I've used insulin recently before Body Power, now a few people came up to me at Body Power and said that I looked really good, really full, but I actually lost 20 pounds by the time Body Power came around. I tried, it was actually a second-hand Milos protocol that Ben Chow gave me, and it was a large amount of insulin with a large amount of carbs, very, very low fats, with every meal, and I did that for about 2 weeks before Body Power. Now, 4 days before Body Power, I ended up being very busy. I went down to 1 or 2 meals a day, and I didn't take any insulin. And by the time we got to Body Power, I dropped 20 pounds in 4 days. So Dave is quite correct. It was kind of a pointless exercise.
It's a great exercise if you need to look big and full for a particular event, a period of time. Rich, bless his cottons, was a massive manipulator of this for expos, and he actually was open about it a few times. He'd run a growth hormone and insulin blast load prior to an expo, probably about 15-20 days before, and he'd turn up at the expo 20-25 pounds fuller and heavier than he would be normally, and then he'd finish it, let it all drop off and go back to his normal weight. So you never saw Rich at his proper weight when he was at an expo. It was always 20-25 pounds above what he normally was.
By Rich, he means Rich Piana, not me.
No, not him. Not me. If he was 25 pounds less than what he was, it'd been out left. Be a pair of carbs and that would be it.
Yeah, but what calves?
Yeah, you got good calves, mate.
That's all I got.
Shit chest, but you got good calves.
I've got wonderful gyno. So yeah, I think we've actually quite a good little batch of questions on this one. Like I say, I apologise for the signal issues we've had dropping in and out, but I will upload the video in whole when I've got good signal, and hopefully that will flow straight through because it's been recorded straight on my phone. Anyone who's got any other questions, now is the time to ask, because if not, I'm going to switch this off and rest my little cotton socks before I have to ride my motorbike back to Shrewsbury.
And he killed 40 miles, so it's quite good.
Yeah. So I'll give you 20 seconds to throw out any questions, and if not, we'll leave it at that. Just check I've not missed anything. We've done the protein question, we've done the cycling insulin, done the calories, weight gain and a calorie deficit. Yeah, I think that's everything caught up with. Thank you very much for watching.
I've got a question.
Oh, go on.
Well, feminists say that they want to be equal to men.
Yes, but they still want doors being open for
Hang on. But then they say that all men are pigs.
Right. We've got a load of questions. Dominic Dunleavy, gyno, can you get rid of it without surgery? So
Depends if you've got gyno or not, is the first answer, and I know that sounds stupid.
I've kind of always had teenage gyno from being a fat kid. This last year I've been a little bit up and down. I've been very inconsistent with my PED usage, and basically what I've done is I've been in a bad position with training and diet, and every now and again over the course of the last year I've gone, right, that's it, I'm going to be completely honest, I'm going to get on a cycle, and I'd take some D-bol, I'd throw in some test, and then I'd get distracted and I'd forget all about my cycle and I'd stop. And every time I've done that, I've probably accumulated a little bit of tissue, and it's got to the point now where I've got a bit of gyno developed from that. I don't intend to compete ever again, so as it stands I'm not really bothered about it, to be honest. But if I did, I'd probably look at going over to Poland and having it chopped out. That's the most effective way of dealing with it. If it's very, very new, non-established gyno, I believe some people have had success using letrozole and Novadex to remove it.
Well, one of the issues here is that a lot of people class as gyno isn't actually full-blown gyno, it's just a swelling of the glands before the tissue is formed.
Yeah.
And that's where good IA management can come in and get rid. If the tissue is formed, then you're hard-pressed to remove it with drugs. But if you've got the information, then yes, drugs are going to get rid.
I've got very much tissue. Yeah, good. A good A cup. But, you know, I've done it to myself. I'm not particularly fussed about it. I certainly look a shitload better than I did when I was 24 stone as an 18-year-old, because that guy had actual tits. So I'm not going to stress about it particularly.
Good cleavage, though.
Yeah. Certainly if I was competing, it would be more of an issue. How about steroid lab talk? Best labs you feel are out at the minute, want to avoid? I'm not going to touch that with a barge poles, man.
No, not going there.
No, you can talk amongst yourself on that one. No.
I mean, there's a couple, but there's a lot of shit.
There's a lot of crap. Things that have been established for a longer time, I generally am more predisposed to trust. If you are unsure, the one thing I would say is I would rather use a small amount of a quality product than a lot of a shit product. Yeah. I think that's fair. I don't know. I think he's dying.
Hay fever.
Hay fever. I assume Ben knows all about what stuff to use. He seems to be doing fairly well. So yeah, well, thank you all for watching. A few people, I think Ben said that it was awesome. Lisa said something about feminazis are like that, real feminists want equality for all. Alright, okay, again, not touching that with a pole. Not getting involved.
I just wanted the shits there.
Yeah, sorry, don't hurt me.
Okay, a more important question. Is a Jaffa cake a cake or a biscuit?
It's a cake because when it goes stale it gets hard.
Is that how you define a cake or a biscuit?
Yeah.
When it goes stale, it gets hard?
Yeah, that's science.
Is it?
Yeah, Nathan Devlin saying don't be needy, Nathan, it doesn't become you. Joe
right.
Jeffrey is watching.
Who?
Joe.
Alright, okay.
Nathan doesn't want us to go because it means he's got to go back to work.
Shouldn't be lazy to that.
So yeah, we're kind of at the end, Joe, but you should be able to watch all of it on record. Cornelius Parkin, I respect you, but it's not a biscuit. If it goes soggy when it's stale, it's a biscuit. Jaffa cakes go hard, therefore it's a cake.
Con, you've got to admit, that is pretty good logic, to be fair. I'm struggling to come up with an argument against that at the
That's
moment.
legitimate science.
But all right then, Eccles cake.
No one likes them, so no one cares.
Eccles cake goes soggy.
But are they the like biscuit thing with
the one with the rabbit shit in the middle? Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a biscuit that's called a cake. It's a biscuit because it goes soggy.
But it's not a biscuit; it's a pastry.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well then,
So your argument.
That's the exception that proves the rule. And on that note, I thank you and good night. See you all soon.